Hi, today we're going to talk about introductory paragraphs. What's the purpose, you might say? Well, of course, as with any introduction, it's to introduce the ideas of your essay. Not to give them all away, not to spell out everything you're going to talk about, but to introduce the ideas and bring people into your paper or into your writing so that they're interested and engaged. So an introductory paragraph would have three main parts. We're going to talk about the hook, the attention grabber. I'm going to talk about the bridge, transferring from the hook to your thesis, and of course the all-important thesis comes at the point of your intro. Hence the triangle. Starts broad, leads to the point, your thesis. The hook or the attention grabber is your starter. You're trying to bring people into your paper. In middle school, you got taught certain ideas. Well, now you're in high school, and these are not necessarily what you should rely on all the time. It's time to be as a sophisticated writer as you are a sophisticated young adult. The middle school teachers might have taught you that imagine you were stranded on a desert island scenario might work. It's time to move on past that. You also could ask a question. What would you do if your friend lost their job? Those kinds of things. That's not what we're going to do here. We're going to give you some other strategies to try to move your writing to be a little bit more sophisticated. Instead, you might want to try an interesting fact. Bring something to the topic that you're talking about and find some fact out there. You've got plenty of resources. Use Google if nothing else comes to mind. But bring us in with an interesting fact, some kind of piece of information. You can use a quote. You could have a quote about the topic, or you could have a quote that somebody says in the book, or you could have a quote from your interview. You could tell an anecdote. An anecdote is a short story. It could be about someone in your paper, or it could be about somebody else that applies to your paper. Again, here the key is short to make sure that it's not too long, too developed. You could use a current event, something that's happening that applies to what's going on in the paper that you're going to write, or of course a short personal story. Again, be careful because it should be short, but also now you've got to transfer from talking about yourself to talking about your topic, and you do want to get rid of those personal pronouns quickly. Some examples. Let's say I was writing an interview narrative where I had interviewed my mother and I was going to write a paper about how she has become the independent woman that she is today. I might use a fact. Here's a fact. In 1967, 14.8 million women were employed full-time in the United States. Okay? That would be a fact, trying to draw my readers in. They might be thinking this is low. They might think this is high, whatever. I'm trying to get them drawn into my paper through that. Here's a quote from my mother. Going to work seemed what I should do. I didn't feel I had many choices, said my mother when she was asked about why she went to work right out of high school. So there's the use of a quote from my interview. I can't use this quote again anywhere else, but I can use it in my intro to draw in people. Maybe I could tell a short story. Ring, ring went the phone in my mother's house on high school graduation day, for McDonnell Douglas was calling to offer her a secretary job in their offices. So here is an example of a story. It's short. It's one sentence. We get the idea. Unlike my father, who graduated from high school, had a fun summer, and then attended college in the fall, my mother went straight to work. So while this is a story, personal story, this is more like another anecdote trying to come in. I couldn't think of a good current event for this topic, but certainly there are plenty of things that you could include there. The bridge is the middle. This is the part that should explain your hook and lead into your thesis statement. If you used a quote or an interesting fact, it's time to explain how that quote or fact is going to work in your paper. How does that tie to what you're going to talk about? You need to write a sentence that ties that quote to your thesis. What is the connection? Sometimes in papers about a specific piece of text or introductions can summarize the story briefly or explain the piece of text you're studying. So don't forget that can go in the bridge part as well. Here are some examples. Here's my interesting fact. My bridge would be that my mother was one of those 14.8 million women, for she started working for McDonnell Douglas right after high school graduation. And then here's my thesis. My mother's first job made her the independent woman she is today. And then I would have my paper. This might not be the most smooth piece, but it does show you the 3 different pieces, sentences that should be there, and you could do some transitions to try to smooth that out. Here's my mother's quote, right? And then here's my bridge. For my mother, college wasn't an option, so she went to work. My mother's first job at McDonnell Douglas, my thesis, made her the independent woman. Here's 2 more. Here's that story about the phone ringing. Right after graduation, my mother didn't take the summer off, didn't rest, but instead went straight to work. My bridge. My mother's first job made her the independent woman, the thesis. Here's my unlike my father. My mom went to work. That's that story. After graduating from high school, here I put in the name of the company and where it was and her job, and then my thesis. So you kind of get an idea of some samples. Again, these are not beautiful, these are not perfect, but you can see the 3 sentences there. You can see that you could transition, use some more words to kind of smooth them out. And of course, we know the last sentence is going to be your introduction, your thesis. Last sentence of your introduction is your thesis statement. Very important. It should be 1 complete sentence. Do not try to explain it. Do not try to defend it. That's what your body paragraphs are for. But it should be that last sentence. It's your point. Okay. For more information on how to write a thesis, there is another video called Writing a Thesis Statements, and you can watch that off my channel as well. And here are some other resources. I will try to tag them and put those links underneath the video on YouTube that you could click on those if you need to get some more ideas. Hopefully that will help you write your introductory paragraphs.